This video is sponsored by KnucklesOX, Baba Snake, Julio the Boy, Blazing Darkness G, and Danny Mash X. If you'd like to directly support my content, as well as catch it early, have your name credited as a sponsor, or maybe even have your What If Ideas produce its commissions, consider visiting the links to my Patreon and such in the description below. In late 2024, something happened which proved for better or worse my personal theory that crossovers are not what they once were, and now feel a lot more balancedly possible than they used to be back when I was younger, and would more often wonder about many of the crazy collaborations and mashups we see in the modern era of fan, nerd, and weeb culture. As you've already read the title and seen the thumbnail, I'm of course referencing when IDW and VIZ released a 4-issue crossover comic/manga miniseries bringing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into the world of Naruto. A crossover which makes a ton of sense as to why you'd do it, but before it was actually done, seemed both logistically and logically too difficult to pull off in terms of the licensing and such you'd have to do across countries and big corporations. All way more interested in making a profit first and a good piece of art second, which initially didn't instill a lot of faith this would ever really happen, much less be good if it did. I think they got decently close though, enough that I've been buzzing to take a crack at expanding on this concept since before the official crossover was done, and when I was really only considering this idea as April Fool's story material and little else, back when I had only ever made a short, or what a super mini as I call them, about the concept, before the official crossover was even announced actually. If the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossed over with Naruto, it would at minimum be a fun time. Neither series is a stranger to crossover, with both featuring ninja, family, unity, mystical, spiritual, and extraterrestrial or alien elements. They actually mesh a bit better than you initially expect. For example, a really easy and believable way you could bring about the core concept of the TMNT into the Naruto-verse would be having Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki or Splinter and Shredder's lore play out with the latter maybe defeating Splinter instead of outright killing him and being cruel and selling him to Orochimaru as a test subject. And you'd honestly be free to set them as members of any of the 5 great nations or one of the smaller sub-nations like the Waterfall or Rain, since I think Hanzo and the Shredder would get along really well. Or I could see him taking over what would have been the Akatsuki, and Splinter and his 4 pet turtles could get the ooze substituted by failed versions of Jugo's Curse Mark level 2, since those really can't be turned off. But even with a mutation, Splinter's pre-held knowledge and power can mean Leo, Raph, Donnie, and Mikey may all reach some pretty impressive Anbu to low Kage level power should they learn to harness nature energy on their own and tap into their animal instincts for mystical sage arts. It's funny that I got a decent bit of that right and wrong, and that I didn't say it would be a shell of a time. Also that I was so rushed because shorts were only a minute back then. But either way, I think it's useful to look back on that as well, and that, among the other things, is what this first installment of this new series is meant to be. Basically, an overview of the original Naruto x Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover, so we're all familiar with what it is and what happened, my take on what I consider as missed opportunities or points where they dropped the ball by the official crossover, and finally, a soft shift into a true narrative style of what if for this series to start off with, as we set up the next part and story arc/adventure for the Ninja Turtles, Naruto, Sasuke, and all their respective friends and foes. That's also why this part will be considered/titled issue number 0, and the next part I release in this series will be called issue number 5, since I am to the best of my ability going to try to use this series as a companion to the official crossover, rather than trying to assert myself as able to do better when I have the benefit of both no time frame and hindsight. For those unfamiliar, a quick refresher, but I would highly encourage supporting the official release of the crossover, as this overview won't serve as a replacement or supplement. Beyond that, the original art and designs are really good, enough that I wish we got way more than just 4 issues of this. I obviously won't be showing every page of every issue, but there are lots of varying covers and other details to appreciate firsthand, because a lot of really talented people worked on these books, while Hendry Prasetya and Raúl Angulo are the main artists and colorists of the book, and they put in some fantastic work as well. Anyway, it's first of all very important to specify the story is set during a time period for both this universe's Turtles and Naruto characters, where you could kind of consider things at their most basic, widely known status quo. Like on the Ninja Turtles side, things are very much in what you could call the year 0 to first year of the Turtles' operation in most iterations. The Foot Clan's at the height of its power, possesses great numbers of enemy ninja, even including mutants of their own, with the Shredder, leader of the Foot Clan, holding a strong grudge and hunting them down, while Splinter, the Turtles, and their allies lay as low as possible in the shadows and underground in the sewers. While on the Naruto side, things have been manipulated and changed a tiny bit to keep it interesting, but also for the sake of and only to the ends of achieving the same status quo. For instance, the timing of the events, in terms of the Naruto timeline of the crossover, are very hard to tell. Like either the timeline has changed or else it has to be post the events of the Chunin exams, or rather, past even the events of the Search for Tsunade arc, as Sasuke and Naruto are respectively in possession of the Chidori and Rasengan techniques. Sasuke is also back in his original outfit, however has not, and is not referenced to or implied to have tried leaving Konoha or joining Orochimaru yet, even though the crossover also confirms that he has encountered the Snake Sani, and thus has been curse marked and tempted by his power by the point this mission mission for Team 7 takes place. So we're definitely somewhere vaguely pre-time skip, but not truly post-Sasuke retrieval just yet. There's another big change that definitely confirms this, but we'll touch on that later as it's easier to introduce with a different topic. It should also be specified that they most likely did these changes on the Naruto side of things, instead of just setting things during a Shippuden time frame, where it might be a bit easier to explain, and Naruto would also be a teenager along with his cohorts. It is probably because at that point, you lose out on Sasuke on Team 7, and thus the classic Naruto setup of a hyperactive knucklehead ninja, his teammates, and his teacher going around on missions. The actual plot of the crossover kicks off with April O'Neil, acting as a journalist, and a bit of a bridge between ninja villages, investigating Foot Clan activity and the origins of mutation in Konoha, and hiring Team 7 as her bodyguards and escorts on our way back to Big Apple Village, a location in classic Naruto filler movie style that is exclusive to the crossover, and which is very obviously a reference to New York City, the traditional home of the Turtles, and the majority of their adventures, as well as what serves as the primary setting for the crossover's events. No time on page is actually spent in the Leaf Village actually. The closest we see is a road that presumably leads from there to Big Apple. Before long, we see the classic Clash then Combine trope crossovers, as our Leaf Ninja heroes are initially mistaken for April's captors or Foot Clan affiliates by our mutated ninja heroes. April also kind of weirdly instigates / doesn't de-escalate because I guess she just wants a good fight or a story. Though I'm not going to hold that too harshly against her or the writers, since everyone likes to smash their toys together just a little bit. And so we see an initial face-off, last pairing of the various members of Team 7 and the Ninja Turtles and Splinter, also known as the Hamato clan, with these pairings being equally dictated by shared character traits or archetypes, as well as character color schemes. For example, at first, Leonardo a bit weirdly singles out Sasuke as the leader of Team 7 to take him on, even though Kakashi is right there, and Sasuke even openly admits to not being the Squad 7 team leader, though Leo basically responds and just says something along the lines of, "I could sense the presence of another kinda edgy ninja, and I like to throw hands and blades at other people who take this seriously." They also both classically wear blue, and are the premier blade users of their groups, so that pairs them together at least here, while Raphael and Sakura both having bad tempers and wearing red are paired together. You could also link them together through their both being often considered the most passionate and sometimes even the most physically powerful of their groups, which is also why in the weird time frame of this crossover, Sakura has already gotten far enough into her training with Tsunade that she is already exhibiting medic nin skills and monster strength even before Sasuke leaves the village. Naruto is of course paired with Michelangelo, being linked by their love of the color orange, but also because they are both foodies and the most unorthodox of their groups, while also being designated as the ones with the most potential. In this initial meeting and fight, Naruto is also pitted against Donatello, kinda because there is no one else to fight him, and Naruto can even the odds the easiest with Shadow Clone. But you could also maybe argue that they share a high battle IQ. That said, later on in the crossover, Donatello finds a strong connection in Sasuke like Leo, for a reason that is way deeper than Sasuke just liking the color purple or something like that. Finally, Splinter and Kakashi are paired as the senseis of their groups, but they are also matched up to move the plot along a bit, since Kakashi is able to recognize Splinter as Hamato clan, at least in some way by his fighting style, as it should also probably be specified that the crossover Splinter is the kind of Splinter that was originally just a regular pet rat owned by Hamato Yoshi the Ninja Master, which then got mutated and adopted 4 mutant baby turtles, rather than the other kind which is Hamato Yoshi himself becoming a big mutant rat, that being a pretty big difference. Regardless, this sets up the Naruto version of Hamato Yoshi, as well as Oroku Saki, better known as the Shredder, and their ninja clan now known as the Foot, as residents of a land somewhere near the Land of Fire, along with both being worthy of Kakashi Hatake's notice and praise at that. As introductions end and the crossover teams of heroes get to know one another, the Turtles and Team 7 realize they need to join forces and confront the Shredder and his Foot clan once and for all, after Master Splinter and April are kidnapped along with the secrets of the ooze, made by a mysterious scientist known as Baxter Stockman. Meanwhile, Alopex, Shredder's Chuny, or second in command, who is typically an enemy turned ally of the Turtles, and even a very popular character, and love interest of Raphael in the IDW continuity, turns on the Foot as a byproduct of Shredder's mistreatment, joining Clan Hamato in a battle against evil mutant Foot Ninja. The comic is honestly kind of a nostalgic blast, full of pizza jokes, stylized action, and culminating in a battle against a pretty cool take on the Super Shredder, who has infused himself with both mutagen and chakra, which results in a very obviously edgy, but still pretty dope design, with this mutagen green Renegon included in it. There's also a bunch of decently cool collaboration techniques between the Turtles and Team 7, so overall, it is a really fun read. But for a series bringing some of my favorite combatants in all of fiction into one of my favorite power systems in all of fiction, it honestly barely scratched the surface of what it could have done. It was a love letter that forgot to write the second half of the message, and in hindsight, I think they probably could have justified pushing the crossover event to be at least 3 times the length it actually was, as a full year of issues to expand on this idea would have really done a ton to address many of my complaints and issues with the whole thing. I also, just from a marketing and merchandise perspective, think it is crazy there is 0 merchandise from the crossover aside from the variant covers. No toys of the Naruto-style Turtles, Splinter, April, Shredder, Alopex, the Foot, the mutated Foot Clan, even though I can assure assure you, knowing TMNT fans, they probably would have been pretty big collector's items, even if some people weren't even that interested in this particular crossover. And the crossover toys for TMNT X Power Rangers, Transformers, and Godzilla went pretty hard, so I generally am baffled by how much they didn't fully capitalize on things. And hell, if you can't justify making some basic Team 7 toys of just Kid Naruto and Sasuke and stuff like that, why not make like a What If 2-pack that comes with a regular Team 7 character, and then maybe like a mutated version? It also just kinda hurts because the Sonic X DC crossover, which was the closest big IDW comic crossover in terms of both timing and cultural relevance, is not lacking for merch all that much at all. It's got a full line of Funko Pops, t-shirts, bags, kids books, coloring books, everything you could possibly think of, they've done. That, by the way, also highlights another big issue with the crossover, which was that the Naruto characters barely got to interact with concepts or phenomena from the TMNT world, and vice versa. One of the biggest culprits being Super Shredder and that cool looking Mutant Rinnegan. Yeah, that does nothing. He's wearing that for the fashion, nothing else. And speaking of toys though, one of the biggest hurdles with any crossover or versus battle, what have you, in my opinion, isn't actually what's known as verse equalization, as that's partly something you consider for both power scaling and for the sake of plotting out the events of action stories, like what are usually found in superhero comics or battle manga. Instead, the hardest hurdle to clear is what I'd call the toy smash effect. Basically, when a writer or even just a kid playing with their toys finds the most surface level commonalities, like Raph and Sakura both wearing red and having tempers, and they just kind of stop there without much further exploration of what they can be doing with the opportunity or the prompt. It's safe, it moves books, and it makes the job easier. But it also ignores the mechanical synergy and the full opportunity the crossover presented. For example, the comic gives all 4 turtles power and speed equal to Team 7 as a whole. That's flavor / necessity for the story to continue. But it doesn't address the chakra or physical cost all that much. Actually, not at all. And in a world where Shinobi's life is defined by their pool of spiritual and physical energy, aka their chakra, even if you're someone like Guy or Lee, you still need a certain mastery of taijutsu and bukijutsu in the world to even be able to compete with Shinobi who are able to do that, plus a lot more. It goes a bit beyond simply having named techniques because the battle manga, or at least a crossover with one. As I will say, the story made the wisest choice possible in having the turtles adapt to the Naruto verse rather than vice versa. But even so, the lack of the turtles having actual named techniques of their own is actually a valid and sizable criticism for the crossover, as in my eyes, it just makes them feel weaker and less knowledgeable about the Shinobi world than they should be. Very much the same effect of Naruto returning from his time skip train with just a bigger Rasengan, but a lot worse. And this isn't to dismiss how strong the basic Ninja Turtles can be, mind you, as that's part of my issue. The turtles of this crossover verse are just way too boring for the setup, and it's in an attempt for them to not stray too far from the classic power set of the TMNT, I suspect. But the thing is, even in their most basic forms, without any kind of mystical or natural energy shown in battle manga power system mumbo jumbo, Ninja Turtles are already kinda cracked in lots of different iterations throughout the Nexus, which is what they call their multiverse in the franchise. At the slowest, some versions of them are just above the speed of human perception, to on the higher and faster end, seeing turtles moving at faster than light and massively faster than light speeds like in Rise. Again, the crossover comic even featured Alopex, who is one of the resident speedsters or speed-based fighters in TMNT lore, partially because she is a big part of the IDW continuity the crossover was published alongside, but she may have also been presumably used because these turtles are implied to somewhat be relative to her in speeds as well, which is a good way to sell that these are stronger than average versions of Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. In terms of physical strength, weaker versions of them have a lifting and striking power of multiple tons, while some stronger versions can sling around and bust through planet-sized objects with ease. In terms of durability, recovery, and healing, we've seen turtles in all kinds of interpretations go through and survive some pretty gnarly injuries, from stuff like lost limbs that have sometimes even grown back, to having their faces blown off or their shells fully cracked and destroyed bodies that require cybernetic and medical intervention and enhancement. Thus, this is all to say that a Ninja Turtle with access to Naruto's chakra power system would therefore be able to buff themselves, and whether on that lower or higher end, it should still result in a much more interesting or impressive showing of power or ability from them than what we are shown in the crossover, as everything about them would become amplified and buffed by the chakra, and they would also gain access to the ability to grow stronger and use more complex techniques while increasing their pools of chakra. This is also not even to touch on the mixing of concepts you can get into with TMNT's own mystical power systems, or deeper lore, and that of Naruto's, or even something as small as considering how things like the ooze would interact with chakra, as creatures like some in Beast Lands already naturally occur. Like for example, Mike Guy has a canonical contract with actual Ninja Turtles, or I suppose tortoises for example, and even that brings up interesting questions, since the turtle summoning contract is completely unexplored, while Naruto 5e, which I am pretty fond of and will be using again in this video later, theorizes of and gives it some pretty interesting abilities, like a natural affinity / resistance to water damage and chakra / ninjutsu, alongside an affinity and proficiency to sealing or sage arts, which I will say does feel kinda in line with some Hamato Yoshi / Splinter Clan teaching vibes, with the whole being well read in ancient ninjutsu characterization of Splinter, which is a very consistent trait for him, in this case being mixed with the idea that turtles typically move slowly, or not at all, and are extremely long-lived, making them pretty strong symbols of Seiji qualities, especially in the Naruto world. It should also be noted that Naruto 5e also also classes reptiles like turtles and lizards, for example, as minor forms of dragon, which really is a very interesting coincidence, especially considering some of the lore of the 2003 TMNT series. But sadly, every name technique the turtles use in the actual crossover is their collaboration with Team 7, which are admittedly simple, but worth going over for the sake of prosperity, since they do highlight some of the major changes and fun things that can be found with those changes. Lightning Katana and Lightning Chidori Scissors, a team-up move of Kakashi and Leonardo, and later, the rare team-up of Sasuke and Kakashi. The first is very simple but effective, simply using the S-ranked lightning blade with a weapon, as we've seen is already very deadly, but when swung by a massive and strong mutated ninja turtle, it's even more devastating. While the second is a much higher level collaborative ninjutsu, seeing both Sasuke and Kakashi activate their lightning style signature moves and rush their opponent from opposite sides. While charging and wielding Chidori and lightning blade, they then cross their hands in a shearing motion to slice through their target and its defenses like a literal lightning charged pair of scissors. Probably something they should have gotten a chance to pull off in canon, honestly. Sharingan Staff, a team up of Sasuke and Donatello, which reveals a really interesting little fact. The Donatello of this Naruto crossover universe can mirror the precognitive and predictive element of a Sharingan on the same level of Sasuke that, may I remind you, is at least implied to be at the same stage of Sharingan mastery, as a post-search for Tsunade / first Valley of the Infight Sasuke. Plus, he is shown to have a 3-tomo Sharingan by this point. The rest of the technique is really just Sasuke and Donnie finding the weakest point in their target and then striking it together, kinda combining their Sharingan and brain. In fact, it's technically more taijutsu than ninjutsu, but it does concretely establish that Donatello essentially has mental prowess strong enough to rival / equal an actual Kekkei, flat out one of the strongest and most useful Kekkei. And so I will spoil that it is overtly the most consequential of these collaboration techniques. At least that is if applied to an expanded story, as it's another thing they didn't really do all that much with in the actual crossover. Cherry Blossom Shell Smash and Cherry Blossom Catapult, a team up of Sakura and Raphael / a team up of Sakura and the entire combined TM and Team 7 squad that should probably just be an actual canon Sakura technique. Cherry Blossom Shell Smash is just the old classic fastball special you see characters like Colossus and Wolverine pull off commonly. A nice alley-oop where a stronger character flings an often weaker, smaller, or very durable character at the enemies to add an extra kinetic force to their attack, as well as just to make the approach towards the target easier. Here, Raph's contribution is really just his physical mass and doing the basic turtle ability of hiding in his shell, which means this honestly could have been done with any one of the turtles. But I do plan to expand on this connection in comparison to Sakura in a way I hope you guys will like. While Cherry Blossom Catapult is the same, but on a much higher scale, the technique and her chakra control based monstrous strength, allowing her to throw an entire squadron of ninja who all outweigh her multiple times over here, plus a massive slab of broken debris, which based on its size, has to be extremely heavy, and thus confirms without a doubt that in the weird timing of this story in the Naruto timeline, Sakura has advanced far enough in training with Tsunade to pick up monster strength early. This being what I mean by the fun that can be had with a couple of changes, as this alone really makes me want to try a what if Tsunade trained Sakura early to see how she'd do on the Sasuke Retrival mission with these abilities. The Uzu Mikey Angelo Barrage, a team up of Naruto and Mikey that feels as classic Naruto as it gets. Back when you could just do a few cool taijutsu attacks in succession, call it a barrage, and be done with it, or by crashing your leg through your Ori's guts. This move is also somewhat based on pizza, as the opponent the two were facing at the time when inventing it was very hit spongy and hard to hit like pizza dough, so the technique was designed to spin the target to break its guard and posture, and then finish them off with a pound. Generally not a lot more to say about that one. And finally, Half Shell Rasengan Spiral Spear, though I suspect this will just be shortened down to Half Shell Rasengan, a team up move by a QB empowered Naruto alongside all the turtles in Team 7, after being launched by Sakura's Cherry Blossom Catapult, the ultimate climax of the official crossover miniseries, as Naruto forms a large vermilion Rasengan and charges, while the 4 turtles charge behind him and presumably contribute their own kinetic force and weapon striking power into the rotation, as Team 7 do the same. Even if a bit uninspired, it is a powerful enough technique to seemingly atomize Super Shredder's physical body. In terms of non-name techniques, there is at least one more that I feel obligated to mention, since across comics, TV shows, and movies, we also often see the ability of stronger fighters in the lore of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, especially when in the pixelated medium of games like Shredder's Revenge, where the ability stems from, and is often a reference to, energy isn't just a glow for aesthetic, it is a temporal ghost or after image, a power signature. When the heroes unleash their super attacks, they move so fast and attack so powerfully, or with such technique, precision, and skill, that the universe kinda struggles to keep up, leaving behind colorful silhouettes that trail like ink and water. The TMNT and Naruto comic depicts this as a small Easter egg, but it is also consequentially the only real non-basic technique we see the turtles use when not collaborating with Team 7, as most of their other abilities are just the same most fundamental ninja skills most other shinobi in the world have. Because it's a kind of power signature you can identify each turtle by using color, it's something which I'll hereby be calling the Sword or Weapon Ore series of Bukijutsu, which is a concept I'm lifting from Naruto 5e, as it offers some explanation we can apply to these abilities, which will also help me differentiate them, though I am changing them just a little bit. Also means fans of that TTRPG TMNT system can kinda make their own versions of the turtles and follow along with the story if so inclined, as I myself will kinda be doing that to keep track of their progress. But seriously, aside from these video game inspired aura attacks, the Ninja Turtles don't display any special named abilities, even though they are implied to have most basic shinobi tools and techniques, and some of their basic skills and traits in this verse are on the level of named Naruto techniques or abilities. We do see Splinter use an unnamed lightning jutsu on Kakashi, but that's about it, and I mean it's strong, as it's able to blow Kakashi back, which is notable for a nameless technique. I also assume it's one of the moves Kakashi recognized as Hamato Yoshi's. But in terms of tools and weaponry, for example, they're carrying kunai, shuriken, and other ninja tools, where in other iterations they may only ever had their shells and their main weapon on them at any given time. I also want to point out that Donnie does have a chunin, or much less likely, a jonin vest. Now whether he is just wearing it for extra protection and storage space of more tools, or he has actually been recognized as a chunin who can lead his brothers in this universe, is unknown, since I would argue this crossover never explicitly spells out for us who is the team leader. As in the modern era, Leonardo doesn't necessarily have to be the assumed leader, and if he genuinely does have a mental Sharingan, I think Donatello is actually a great choice to lead the Turtles as the chunin of Clan Hamato and Splinter's second in command. For this reason, we'll assume that the Turtles also likely know how to use simple thrown weapons, as that's not without precedent in things like the 2012 cartoon, and we'll also assume they can each make a simple clone genjutsu and use the transformation jutsu, which will make hiding their mutation exceedingly easy while in long missions at Big Apple Village, as it is implied that before the events of the crossover comic, the locals were not all friendly or en masse aware of them. They also all at minimum need to be at this level of chakra control to even challenge or keep up with Sakura, let alone just to be a match for Team 7 as a whole, since that's the minimum you need to achieve to not be an academy washout. We can also of course assume that because of this, the Turtles possess both abundant enough chakra and the necessary chakra control to execute jutsu like the body flicker, for example, which vastly increases the base speed of a ninja for a quick burst of motion. And adding that gives us a list of about 4 or 5 named techniques or jutsu per each turtle. We could likely bump that up by at least 1 each if we add in their collaborations, since I would also be shocked if the brothers didn't have a combo attack they trained and worked on as well with each other. And if they have done or begin to do that, then they could also come up with collaborative techniques for each possible pairing, combination, and permeation of the 4 brothers together. But even with that, that's still not a ton, especially when a bunch of those are gimmies I've assigned to the Turtles rather than things we're actually shown they are capable of, and honestly, that leaves you with more questions than anything in my opinion. What chakra natures would the Turtles have? How would they train from the point after the comic ends, and how could they grow from there? What areas of actually being a shinobi would each of their personalities lend them best to? What other techniques do Splinter or Hamato Yoshi and Shredder know, since they also barely show off any named abilities whatsoever? So still using our Naruto 5e referencing makes this easier, as it's important to know that the system doesn't really allow for multi-classing as you classically know it, because it's far too game-breaking in it. So we will look at it as if that were possible, as I think the Turtles would all be somewhat similar, but would still have slight to major variations amongst them, and this is an easy way to demonstrate that. For example, every turtle would at least have a single level worth of weapon specialist, which in terms of regular D&D is very much a simple martial class, kinda like a fighter or a monk. Very self-explanatory. It is a ninja who, aside from having the basic skills of a ninja, specializes in the use of weapons or buki jutsu. And I would also say that everyone but maybe Donnie would have enough levels in this class to earn a weapon specialist subclass, or what you might call a further specialization or digging deeper into the skill tree. But I don't think these would be all that super consequential. You could also consider them taijutsu specialists to some degree, or at the very least they'd be proficient or have expertise in their martial arts. Now focusing on the nitty gritty of our characters, we'll start with Leonardo, the usual leader in blue who'll do anything to get his ninja brothers through. Leo would likely also have a few classes of Hunter-Nin, the Naruto 5e equivalent of the classic D&D 5e rogue, which is also often attributed to be very much the class of very ninja-y characters like Sasuke or Kakashi, as it gives that classic feel of playing like a shinobi or an agent of the shadows. He would certainly be strong enough as a Hunter-Nin to gain a subclass in it, which would likely be that of a Blade Warrior, granting a lot more mastery and versatility with Kenjutsu and assassination techniques. Think very much characters like Zabuza or post-timeskip Sasuke, and because ninjutsu in this world has a more varied and deeper meaning than it does in the usual TMNT context, I think Leo would also seek to pick up at least a couple levels of ninjutsu specialist, especially since that would likely be one of Splinter's strongest traits, and thus something Leo would strongly strive to emulate. As for chakra natures, I have little doubt in my mind that Leo would work really hard to gain multiple as soon as he possibly could, if not full mastery of all changes in chakra form and nature. But to start out, I think that access to water and maybe yang chakra would make the most sense, though it should also be noted, as in most universes, Leo would likely train a lot, and often try to pick up whatever techniques he could, even if they were from enemies, maybe even knowing just a little bit of every specialty his brothers go into, but not enough to be considered a master of them, kinda like a bit of a Scout-Nin vibe. In the 2012 series, during the Vision Quest, when the Turtles are all associated with an element, and I believe that happens in 2003 as well, but that version of Leo's chakra nature is actually wind, while water goes unutilized, but I obviously would like to save wind for a bit, at least for now. In the crossover, however, Leonardo does actually express a lot of admiration and interest in the lightning chakra nature, especially after collaborating with and seeing both Kakashi and Sasuke in action, and when they use the chakra nature, it's usually blue, whereas when some others it usually comes out yellow, and thus keeps him at the color color scheming theme of this whole crossover, so I do think their flavor of lightning style would be even more intriguing to him. Plus, Splinter does use lightning style in the crossover as well, and thus I think Leonardo would go after it first if he were to already wield water nature. As for his current signature or special jutsu, Leonardo's form of the weapon Aura clan technique is Katana Aura Blue, an S-rank Buki/Kin/Nin jutsu, where you use the buildup of chakra and kinetic energy in your blades to have it explode out in a shining blue localized storm of slices and dices as you slash. And when you do, you can either cast two separate forms of secondary stage to the technique, arrow or break. The arrow form of the technique condenses these slashes into a powerful piercing cannon or beam, very akin to something like a Roronoa Zoro Phoenix series attack, giving a swordsman the range of a marksman, while the break form condenses all that raw chakra and kinetic power into a final dashing attack against a single target, allowing for cool moments where he can speed blitz his opponents and then sheath his weapon before they even know they're cut. This is also a cool coincidence because of Leo being strongly tied to Sasuke in the crossover, who has his own interesting relationship with archery, and the main weapon of the Vision Quest version of Leo is a bow and arrow, a strong connection on multiple levels. Raphael is the real wild card to me, and it's not because he has the most attitude on the team, as I think after the events of the crossover, aside from weapon or taijutsu specialization, he would take a lot of interest in the strength and combat/tanking abilities of Sakura, and therefore, I'm going to say that Raph would train to become a combat medic nin, granting him access to both monster strength and medical release and his ninjutsu, which as seen in stuff like TMNT Urban Legends would be pretty valuable for a brawler like him who's always aggroing the danger. It also means his basic mutagen enhanced healing would be further amped in ways we don't have time to fully speculate on in just issue 0. This is also an interesting route to take Raph in, since in the 2012 show, Splinter basically teaches Leo how to use Mystic Palm Jutsu, and then after he learns it, he basically uses it to heal from poison and then use monster strength to gut check the shit out of Karai. While I could easily see going full taijutsu specialist for Raph, since medical ninja training can be very difficult and time consuming and requires just a lot of determination and passion, but also a lot of discipline and self-awareness too. Plus in Naruto 5e, there is a taijutsu specialist subclass called Righteous Fury, and that does fit Raph. So remember, it's kinda as I said with weapon specialists, where each brother could arguably have at least a level up to gain the most basic benefits. Though the other major benefit of combat medic/medic nin training is the stress on chakra control, which helps with everything else, but also simple genjutsu like basic clones, which would then serve as a perfect portal from the Rise version of Raph, but also builds him as the most tanky and hard to put down turtle, and that's certainly what he'd want to go for, in a way almost the exact opposite build to Leo's, but arguably just as formidable. I think that there is no more fitting of an elemental chakra nature for Raphael than that of fire, even if I could entertain an argument for Earth, as it's also what he gets in Vision Quest, and it just fits his temper, and even his version of the super attack/glowing weapon technique, Psi Aura, Red, a C-rank Buki/Tai/ninjutsu, and the beginning to unlock the path of Weapon Aura, a path only master martial artists or weapon specialists could ever even hope to follow, where you send a controlled flood of chakra into your weapon, the striking portion flaring red from the intense flow of unregulated chakra, causing friction in the metal, and therefore adding heat or fire damage to attacks even if the user isn't adept at or capable of changing their chakra nature to fire at the time, as your very weapon itself explodes with force. Its lower ranking and difficulty among the weapon aura jutsu means it can be combined with other Buki or taijutsu easily, like say one that could cause Raphael to spin at high speed and form a dangerous drill of heat and metal that draws enemies in and their attention away from his allies. And even if this reckless attack results in extra damage incurred to himself, it will just fuel Raph's rage while his enhanced healing keeps him going and fighting all the harder until he completely runs out of chakra and life force. Donatello is the mutated turtle fellow we'll be talking about next, and I think he would very obviously pick up levels of Science-Nin, gaining enough levels in the class to be considered an engineer, which would allow him to make his own ninja tools all he likes, as that's just the most fitting idea I can think of as the class he focuses on most, being of course akin to the regular D&D 5e's artificer class, and Donatello does machines. However, because of some of his ability to discuss beforehand, like the mental Sharingan, and the fact that being a ninja in this world, unlike in the usual TMNT verse, is more of an actually applied field of study or even a science unto itself, so I think Donnie would kind of thrive here, being able to easily pick up levels of and be considered an intel operative class, which is something kind of like a bard but not exactly the same, more focused on the idea of being the brains of the party's operation. There are even some versions of intelligence operative ninjas that are about precognition, which feels really fitting for Donatello, as some versions of him like in 2012 have feats like defeating mind readers who can move before the actions of their enemies. Donnie would also be capable of the necessary intelligence and chakra control of being a genjutsu specialist, which is kind of like an illusion wizard class in 5e. Plus, he can already do certain things that feel akin to that of Uchiha abilities like predict the attacks of opponents and presumably may have resistance to and the ability to break himself easier out of a genjutsu with simple reasoning/deduction and chakra control if his brain is generally the equivalent of a 3-tomo Sharingan. Thus, of course, Donnie would have natural affinity to the mental energy Basean chakra nature, while his elemental nature affinity, aside from water, if we grant it as natural to all brothers, would be that of earth, just like in the 2012 Vision Quest where he learns to be like the mountain. Though you could also, because of his mechanical inclination, see him take an interest in light and release like Leo did. Donnie's weapon color technique is Bow Staff Aura Indigo, or call it Bow Staff Aura Purple. Comment which one you like better, and that'll let me know how many people got this far into the video. And while you're doing it, drop me a like, a hype, and subscribe too, please. Look, I'm really close to 100k. Anyway, Donnie's Bow Staff Aura is an A-rank Buki/Nin/Genjutsu, where you both strengthen and elaborate the complexity of the chakra surging into your weapon, causing the striking portions to take on a brilliant purplish to deep indigo glow, and extending its range and reach even further, as the light cast by the weapon can pierce through one foe, and then lash out at the next due to its dual tactile and intangible nature, allowing the weapon wielder to turn technique-heavy flourishes and defensive motions of a versatile tool into a very useful secondary and tertiary attack, as the opponent needs to worry about the actual weapon, the weaponized chakra, and the illusionary afterimage and light caused by this jutsu that preys on fear and hesitation. Now, Michelangelo is a party dude, but he is also commonly stated as the Ninja Turtle with the greatest amount of untapped potential, and because the characters in the crossover comic are paired together based on color scheme and personality, Mikey is also very quick to sync up with and become good friends with Naruto, because they are very similar. Thus, I would build Mikey, at least at first, as a somewhat nunchuck-wielding turtle version of Naruto, doing so by assigning him the Scout-Nin class, as Naruto is often attributed to in the Naruto 5e system, since it is the form of Jack-of-all-trades class, akin to a more versatile fighter, kind of like the Champion subclass. You could also easily give Mikey levels of Ninjutsu Specialist, Cooking Nin, and even extra Taijutsu Specialist and Hunter-Nin if we want to get really nitty-gritty. As for his chakra natures, Mikey would of course have an affinity for the wind nature, allowing him to match Naruto, though I think if you wanted to show a strong progression for Mikey, and even reference his element from Vision Quest, then allowing him to full-on learn or find a way to mimic the effects of wood release would be most fitting, as there Splinter tells him to not be so easily distracted and stay calm and strong like the forest. While speaking of abilities from Hokage, I could very easily see Mikey having interest in the Shadow Clone and Rasengan, or just moves Naruto is able to make use of in general. But like I said, that's not all I plan to give or to explore with Mikey during the crossover expansion. Michelangelo's weapon color technique is Nunchaku Aura Orange, a B-rank Tai/Buki/Ninjutsu, where you strengthen your weapon aura, flooding more chakra into the tool, the striking portions flaring orange from the mixing and reshaping of chakra. The speed, density, striking power, reach, and frequency of your blows can take on different unpredictable variations and changes of tempo, forcing enemies to be easier fooled by feints and hit hard by quick and unexpected counters, making it a perfect technique for those who are either extra creative or unorthodox in their fighting style. Moving on to Splinter, who is supposed to have taught the ninjas everything they need. He is shown on page in the crossover to have a lightning nature, but because of how strong he is / his lore, I could easily see him having all 5 basic chakra natures, and qualified to be counted as having levels in a bunch of different classes, primarily like the Professor Ninjutsu Specialist class, alongside stuff like Hunter-Nin, Gin, Taijutsu, and Weapon Specialist. When it comes to Alopex, she honestly does very little in the comic, but if she is meant to have her usual speed-based abilities in this continuity, access to swift release, and therefore a natural wind and lightning nature affinity would be really cool and fitting. Then I would also give Alopex access to Yin Chakra and some Genjutsu Specialist abilities as well. And while you always need to watch out for the Shredder, like Splinter, he doesn't get to do a lot in the comic, but everything that Splinter can do, we can assume that Shredder can do plus more, since he learns everything from Momoto Yoshi, Shredder's direct rival. I would also consider Oroku Saki as having high enough levels in Hunter-Nin to be a Blade Warden, and enough in Taijutsu Specialist to inflict the righteous fury of the Shredder on his opponents. Thankfully, the crossover itself depicts the heroes as being convinced that they still need to watch out for the Shredder, and holding on to a belief that he will return someday, so it's not like he's fully wasted, but he's certainly one of the major red flags of how shallowly the story explores some things. And that analysis of the characters for the most part sums up a lot of my problems with the crossover comic, as it just gives us a 4-issue demo of what this world for the Ninja Turtles looks like, but I want to play the full game. If the Turtles are truly a part of the Hamato clan, residents of the Land of Fire, a part of the world of Naruto, then their story doesn't just end with Super Shredder's defeat. In fact, their story doesn't even start with their mutation. So moving on from issue 4, it should honestly be the beginning of seeing the consequences of that victory, as just aside from the Naruto characters the Turtles didn't get to meet and interact with, or fight, there are major parts of the TMNT universe I would have enjoyed seeing in the Naruto style, lore, and story. Just to name a top 5, I think it's actually pretty crazy we see no signs at all of Casey Jones, Krang, Karai, Metalhead, or Baxter Stockman, who is literally name dropped in the crossover but never depicted. And this is finally where I truly come in, and the point you've been really waiting for, where I try to provide a setup for the continuation of the story after the ending of the comic. And so, the alliance between the Hidden Leaf and Big Apple Village in the nearly 6 months following the defeat of Super Shredder has only gotten stronger, much like our characters, as in the time following the defeat of Shredder and the Foot, the political bridge between villages solidified even more. But the real story truly is the training they get up to while they are not patrolling the streets of Big Apple Village or on their own missions. Donatello has officially donned a Chunin vest with the recognized official rank, acting as the tactical liaison between the two villages. He spent many of his days in the labs of the Scientific Ninja Tool Weaponry team, and also trying to establish a program like that in his own homeland. Here, he would meet and begin working alongside a young and very eccentric Katsuki Tono, who he had sprung up an unlikely frenemyship with. Together, they've been experimenting with creating new tools that make the standard kunai look like a relic of the past. Donnie has also begun to enjoy a shogi rivalry with Shikamaru Nara. Leonardo has been on the high training post with Sasuke and Kakashi, obsessively refining his water nature and attempting to pick up lightning as well. He has stopped just swinging his swords and running through kata, and has now learned to read the flow of battle with the precision of a hyuga, doing things like testing his blade against the likes of Neji to see if his Azure Storm technique of the katana or blue can break a rotation, while also pushing Sasuke forward a great deal during this time, on account of always having a fellow series sparring partner who isn't above letting him borrow one of his katana in order for them to both get in some dangerous kenjutsu practice, at least as long as they did so responsibly. Raphael found an unlikely home away from home at the Konoha Hospital, both because his brawls often sent him there when visiting, but also for training of course, under the terrifyingly watchful eye of Lady Tsunade and Sakura. Raph is very slow to learn the ways of the medical nin, as he at first makes it abundantly clear he's only interested in it as far as the monster strike part of it goes, and he quickly discovers that his massive physical frame isn't just for taking hits, it's an engine, and by focusing his fire nature chakra into his size, with the precise control and power, he's starting to manifest the monster mutant strength needed to level a building with a single strike, like say the IDW versions of Rocksteady and Bebop for an offhanded example. It should also be noted that strangely, Alopex has decided to butt her way into this training as well, much to Raph's dismay, as he has always hated her strongly, and doesn't trust her face churn one bit like his father or brothers are willing to. This however does motivate him to lock in for a training with Sakura and Tsunade even further, so that way he can fix things and then clobber Alopex in case she is planning something. And this would also probably mean that the Sakura of this universe would be getting even stronger even faster than she already was. And Michelangelo, he's basically the spirit or the mascot of Big Apple Village now. So between eating competitions with Choji and Kiba, he's been training and having a great time with Naruto and Jiraiya. They realize quickly that Mikey's orange rhythm is the perfect match for the wind nature, as this allows Mikey to create vacuum seals with his nunchucks that can pull enemies into devastating barrages, along with many other impressive techniques. Plus, the orange-clad Ninja Turtle's high potential, and the fact that he gets along so well with Naruto, means that like the effect Leonardo's presence would have on Sasuke, it would therefore mean that Naruto gets a boon from this, allowing him to pick up new techniques or ideas inspired by, or even taught by Maki in return for Naruto's teachings and help. And for a little while, this all becomes the new status quo. Things are fun, it is peaceful, but in the world of Shinobi, peace is just the silence before the ultimate ninja storm. The clock has run out. The Sasuke Retrival mission is about to begin, as Orochimaru is making his moves finally. But in this timeline, the mission has a darker complication. Intelligence has reached the Hokage's desk. Orochimaru and the Sound 4, or rather 5, haven't just taken Sasuke. The Snake has made an alliance and been experimenting on the remnants of the Foot Clan, as well as Baxter Stockman himself. The mutagen didn't die with Super Shredder and has not been lost. The opposite, it has evolved and was further reproduced. As a result, the Sound 4 have been reinforced by mutated Foot/Sound Elite Ninja, who can shrug off a Chidori like a paper cut. Shikamaru's squad is already preparing to head out, but they aren't going alone. For one thing, if he is healthy, Rock Lee would likely just be placed on the team initially, since as we established in this crossover continuity, Tsunade seems to have been back in Konoha for a while. And while at it, Sakura could probably make her way on the Retrieval team as well, unless she is held back to serve in the hospital during the time of need. Even so, with the lack of Jonin in this timeline coming as a result of an influx of B rank plus missions, the Hamato brothers like the Sand siblings have been contracted to join the mission as backup, and are as we speak, moving out to settle the score with their past, and to ensure that the future of the ninja world isn't born in a mutagen tank. Next time, in part 2, also known as issue number 5, we're heading into one of the greatest arcs in all of Naruto, when boys and teenagers become men. It's Sound 5 and their mutant allies versus the Sasuke Retrieval team and the Hamato clan, and we'll see exactly what a teenage turtle shinobi is really capable of. So thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Remember to always go beyond plus ultra, and I'll catch you guys next time.